SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. It's 2026 Legislative Day there, Rhino. Them zany legislators, they are traveling back to the Dome. I hope you got the Cyclops and the Patriot Man on the stilts ready to transport them bills. Unicycle, okay. Back and forth.
He also juggles bowling pins.
We got to do it. We just got to do it. Oh, it would be so great.
Hey, corner office, you listening? We need a budget.
That's right.
If I give you an itemized list, can we get a budget?
Do you know anybody that can ride a unicycle?
Not a tall one. I do know a couple people that are just some of those uber talented people that anything they put their mind to, they're good at. And they've tried their hand at unicycle, and we're pretty good. But
that'll work.
I don't know that they have access to the one that's that tall.
Okay, well, we'll deal with I'm not going to call him a shorter person. I'm going to be politically correct. How about a less tall? Does that work? Oh, gosh. Well, they're headed back. I got to tell you.
Oh, boy.
One of our listeners, as you know, Representative Price Wallace, down there in just south of Jackson, of course, his district, which I don't know the exact counties in the district. I'd have to look it up. I think you may have a bit of southern Rankin County. He's probably listening. He'll tell us. Copiah County, I think, as well. But nonetheless, he told me this morning, he sent me a text, Rhino. He said, the zany legislators are headed back. Oh, gosh. Hold on to your wallets, right? And all that other stuff. Well, the Speaker of the House, Jason White, he has declared, nothing new here, that school choice and education reform are the top priorities for the 2026 legislative session. He indicates that the House plans to introduce a single comprehensive bill that bundles several previously failed education proposals. I mean, is it possible that a measure, and this is just Simpson and Summer Rankin. Thank you, Price. I forgot about the county.
I've got the outline, and there's D-Lo right in the middle, but the rest of the map's not loading, and I'm going, I don't remember all 82 counties off the top of my head, and it couldn't get the map to load.
Thank you, Representative Price Wallace, for clarifying that for us, and safe travels, sir. And as I told you in text, have a great session. But, Rhino, is it possible, do you think, just asking your opinion here, that a bill may get transferred either via unicycle or the Cyclops this week to the Senate?
Maybe Friday.
Okay. Well, I can see that.
It's Tuesday now. You got all the perfunctory, hey, everybody's here, let's go home.
That's right.
Parties all tonight, tomorrow night, because it's the first week. You got to get your parties in.
That's right.
So tomorrow, you might see it drop, but I think the earliest you'd see it drop would be Thursday.
I think they got this thing wired up already.
Yeah, but you still got to get everybody's gears going, and
you're right.
Not everybody's on the same page of wanting to just jumpstart this thing.
Got to have some time for socializing first, right? And scheduling your lobbyist dinners. Tonight, of course, it's the regularly scheduled house party, little reception that will be held at two museums that has become a custom. I think the Senate's got something else as well, but I believe it's closed. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann has an event at the same time. And then tomorrow, always fun for the food for sure. It's the Coast
reception for elected officials only. Legislative members and elected officials only.
Okay. Those with privilege. So,
but that's the pregame. That's 5 o'clock, and then the house party's at 7.
Okay, gotcha. So there's plenty of time for them zany senators to make it over to the House reception, which kicks off at 7. So that sounds like it was scheduled accordingly. And then tomorrow, it's always fun, it's the Coast reception. You seeing that? I think that's at 5:30 tomorrow, where the Coast delegation.
Yeah, you got the National Guard Association of Mississippi lunch,
okay,
and then the Gulf Coast legislation reception.
There you go. And they bring in, of course, lots of the tasty food from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. You think they'll have little labels out there telling you where the seafood came from? Now that is law. You know, I'm laughing about it now, but it's even crazy that we had to do that, honestly. When you
it has been funny driving by certain establishments that once proudly advertised catfish, and now all of a sudden they're advertising sway.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen that.
It's almost like they weren't really selling catfish in the first place.
Makes you wonder for sure. But to talk about some of this stuff today, we got Senator Jeremy England. I checked him out. He's in the green room already. He's ready to go in his dress blues, coming on in the next segment. He, of course, represents District 51, serves as chair of the Elections Committee, vice chair of Ports and Marine Resources. And then at 11:05, it's Starla Brown, state director of Americans for Prosperity. No secret that they list school choice as their top priority. That is the AFP chapter here in Mississippi. So we look forward to having that discussion with Starla at 11:05 to see what their take is. There is, I'm told, a caucus meeting scheduled this afternoon at 2 o'clock in the House. I'm betting that the Speaker is going to focus on school choice with his caucus there. Maybe do a little vote counting. You know he's already done that, though, more than likely. But I'm thinking there might be some arm twisting going on with respect to education freedom reforms.
I would figure a caucus meeting this early in the session would be more of an outline.
I don't think it is. That's just my opinion.
Like, hey, here's 5 things we want to get done. Now, number 1, school choice. Number 2, 3, and he may prioritize it, but I would imagine it would be. I just imagine it would be more productive if you're like, hey, this is the game plan. This is the order of attack. This is what we're doing.
Well, it's day one. It ain't like they can't have more of these meetings. So I just really think that I could be wrong. But in all the interviews that the media has had with the Speaker, it's been education freedom. Oh, by the way, we might need to do something about PERS. He's mentioned that. He has talked a little bit, really not about too much more than that, mainly some of the specifics with respect to any sort of education freedom policy. And that, of course, generally includes, I think, and is going to look like legislation that sort of phases in universal school choice, the way that it has been done in other states that have implemented universal school choice. The one in Arkansas I thought was really well designed, and I can't help but recall Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, you remember, shortly after she was elected, she made it clear, that's my top priority, and got that done in short order, and it was phased in. I'd have to look at the number of years, 3 to 5 years. There was just different elements of it that were implemented and were activated on the anniversary, I think, of the legislation having passed. One of the things the Speaker talked about was allowing charter schools to locate in districts other than just, as is the case now, which limits the creation, the establishment of a charter school to only D and F districts, which is...
It was like Arkansas was a 4-year rollout.
4-year, okay. 4 years.
Year one was specific groups, like students with disabilities, military families, kindergartners. Year 2 was D or F rated schools. Year 3 was all students in Arkansas, and Year 4 was full universal eligibility for any student to participate.
Okay, so I think, just to clarify, if I'm not mistaken, the Year 3, all students meant all public school students, right? And
Correct.
I think the final Year 4 was, if you got a kid in your household that is K through 12 age, you have access to the state money assigned to your child, right? Which means private schools. Coming right back with Senator Jeremy England.
Hi, this is Mark.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
We're rolling.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
Awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Dan in Hattiesburg, Rhino, wants to add a little feature to the transportation of bills between the chambers. He wants juggling chainsaws.
We're already talking about a parade, and I don't even have a budget. Now I got to talk about chainsaws? That's going to be some expensive insurance.
You're right. We need the corner office to come help us out with the budget.
Just give us the card.
That's right. Okay, it's Senator Jeremy England now in the Element Wealth studio. He represents District 51 and serves as the chair of the Elections Committee, vice chair, Ports and Marine Resources Committee. Senator, welcome back to Jackson, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Gerard. I left my chainsaw at home, unfortunately.
Oh, man. Well, you guys are going to get underway high noon today, right?
Yeah,
is that right?
Gavel in at noon, and probably going to find that we're going to hit the ground running this year. Got a lot to do, and looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good session.
Yeah, sounds like it. Now, the Speaker's made it clear what his priorities are and what his agenda looks like. The Lieutenant Governor has, of course, a slightly different take on what he'd like to get done in the session. Well, your take. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think, last year we ran into, we had a lot of headbutting going on between the two chambers, and I'm hoping we can turn that around this year, and get to where we work together more on things. But yeah, the school choice issue is going to be huge. It's something that we're both looking at on both ends of the hall, and we both have our own ideas.
Okay.
Now I haven't seen bills yet. I like to reserve thoughts on those until we see what the bills are. But I think there's a lot more points that we agree on than what we disagree on, and I think that's the important thing to remember, and that's what we should be working towards this year, in my opinion.
So one of the high profile issues, of course, is the pay for our teachers. Right now, we have, depending on whose report you read, about 6,000 to 7,000 vacancies of public school teachers in the state of Mississippi. I was shocked when I first saw that information a few weeks ago. That sounds like a problem to me. Now, maybe we need to explore some reorganization of our school districts and the organizational structure in general. That's something that's been talked about, including potentially consolidating school districts and maybe freeing up some administrative costs to invest in teacher pay in the classrooms. But here's my concern, Senator, and ask you to react, is we're faced with a number of challenges that are going to cost money. Teacher pay raise costs money. I've seen your colleague, Senator McClendon, say, hey, we need to get them a $5,000 a year raise. Well, that's $250 million.
Right.
We've got PERS, no secret there. We've been talking about that quite a bit. Depending on, again, whose information you want to rely on, that could cost anywhere from $100 million to $200 million a year for a long period of time.
Right. We
got elimination of the income tax going on. We got inflation also happening, which means that cost of just normal state business tend to rise consistent with inflation. How are we going to reconcile all these numbers and make them work?
Yeah, look, and that's the golden question. That's the question that we always have to face, and it's so easy to talk about the things we want to do, right? We want to give teachers as high a pay raise as we can. By the way, we've got members of IHL. We want to give them pay raises. Yeah. We want to give our prison guards pay raises. We want to try to look at everybody, and we have to do it in a way that we're fiscally responsible with it. Now, one thing we do have is we have about a $2 billion surplus, that we've been working through, and I think maybe we need to adjust our budget to reflect that. Maybe that's something that's tending to be more normal. So let's put that money towards things like pay raises for multiple state employees to help them out in things. Put it into our roads and bridges. Help make Mississippi better with that, rather than just cherry picking different projects here and there. I think could be something that we would benefit from. And look, it's no secret. I've said this a lot of times when I talk to folks. Historically, when you see tax cuts happen and you see people have more money in their pockets, they go spend that money, and you actually see revenue go up sometimes from that. And I'm hoping that's what we're seeing as a product of good conservative leadership, which I think we've had. But now we need to start looking at how we're going to dole that out in a way that doesn't get us in trouble, in a way that we understand. We can't overpromise things. And I think some of that may be happening. We've got statewide elections coming up here in another year, so everybody's going to be making big, grandiose promises. But we've got to be smart here when we're here in session. We don't want to get ourselves overboard. And by the way, Lieutenant Governor talks about this all the time. We've paid off almost $2 billion in debt here in Mississippi. We're one of the only states that are doing that, and that's saving us on debt service, on interest payments, things like that. So we're in a very good fiscal condition right now in our state. I think we can start looking at things like pay raises for state employees. We certainly need to give our teachers a pay raise. Let me say that,
Well, we're falling behind the other states now.
That's right. Well, and look, that's how that works, right? The other states see what we're doing. And look, we're still we're still Mississippi. We don't have the revenue that some of these other states have. We don't have the population that some of these other states have. But we have a lower cost of living here. We've got things that are great. But look, the teacher shortage is something that's on all of our minds. It's something we need to look at, and we've got to look at it in a generational way. And we've got to start having more positive feedback, I think, from current teachers. People that I don't like that I see them saying on social media sometimes, I'm telling everybody I know, don't go into the education business. And then they're saying, we need more people because PERS is affected by this. I'm like, well, what do you, which do you want? And, we've got to get back to a positive message, because we really are in a very good shape here in Mississippi. I know that a lot of the infighting takes away from that sometimes, but I'm excited to be here. I'm excited of what we've got going on, and I think we're going to address a lot of the concerns like school choice, like PERS, different things this year.
State troopers and first responders, that's becoming an issue there as well, as far as the pay is concerned, and being able to recruit and retain.
Right.
Those folks that work in those jobs.
That's right, and they have just as much right to tell us, listen, we haven't had a pay raise in so long. We could go, and then the leadership there, Commissioner Sean Tyndall, he's all over this. He takes very good care of his employees, and he knows that there's a potential of them losing troopers to other states. And it's always our best and our brightest that we end up losing, because they get poached from other places, and we don't want that happening.
Yeah, that's right. So. We have, and you're right. We are paying off debt. I think to a great extent, many of the states were showered with a lot of what I call the helicopter money from the federal government during the COVID era.
That's right.
But we got to point out that the state of Mississippi didn't just go run out and dump all that into a bunch of crazy uses, but rather was more conservative and more prudent in the use of those funds, and one of those things was paying off debt. As you know, we still have $400 million a year, I think, in the budget for debt service.
That's right.
Right now. So the more that we chip away at that principle and not add more new debt to it, that figure shrinks in our budget, which is a good thing. Frees up money for other things.
Yeah, we haven't borrowed. We haven't had a bond bill in 4 or 5 years now. And we've been able to pay for things out of pocket, which is what you want to do. We're being, we're running the government like it's a business. And look, that's a credit to Governor Tate Reeves, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann, and Speaker White as well. As my colleagues in the Senate and in the House, I think we've got a really good plan that we're moving forward on. And look, I'll just say this again because I think this is something we need to focus on. I hope we can work together more this year and not butt heads as much with our colleagues in the House from the Senate, and just get back to where we can work together and for the betterment of Mississippi. Because look, your listeners, the folks of Mississippi, they don't care, whether a bill's a House bill or a Senate bill or which side does this or does that. They just want to see some progress and see us doing the people's work up here. Yeah,
I think that's totally true. So, do you feel like there's still some degree of remnant of what appeared to be a wedge between the two chambers last year? Did the ending in particular requiring you guys to come back together and pass a budget, and just the way the tax reform bill went down seemed to kind of separate the two houses rather than unite them? What do you think? Are we kind of clearing the slate and starting over?
I hope so, and I think we should. Look, we've got, again, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann and Speaker White. I respect both of them very much. I think they're both very smart individuals. They're great leaders, and I think that if we can all start from the top and just clear the slate and get back to working together, it's going to be good for everybody.
Stick around. We got a break right here. We got Senator Jeremy England in the Element Wealth studio. The old legislature gaveling in at high noon today in the great state of Mississippi. We're coming right back.
From the season of podcasts, it's time for Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
A little 38 special bumping us into this segment here of Middays. We're in the Element Wealth studio on Gavel-In Day down there at the Mississippi State Capitol. We're visiting with Senator Jeremy England from Jackson County, the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast. Okay, so we're talking about the priorities of leadership. Your priorities, let's talk with elections. I know that last year you drafted a bill, you sponsored a bill that would allow early voting in the state of Mississippi. That legislation did not pass. Is this something you're going to try for again, Senator?
So I don't know that I'll give a run at early voting this year. We got it to the last day, and having talks with with the circuit clerks, the Secretary of State's office, with the the governor's office on a few different things. We decided to let that sit, but I think there's some other priorities I'd like to take a look at this year. I want us to look at campaign finance very strongly. We've had some things happen here in the capital city. We've had some things happening in the Delta where campaign money is being used for reasons it shouldn't be used. So we're going to make a very serious push towards that, and that's been one of the Lieutenant Governor's priorities over the last couple of years. We also want to see, and look, Secretary of State and the Attorney General are both on board with doing something to where we can rein in some of this improper spending and reporting of campaign finance funds. Another thing I want us to do, and the Secretary of State's really big on this, Michael Watson, is putting everything online, filing everything online to where it's searchable, where you can look at it and read it. And I had a very good meeting with his office last month on this. I think we're going to see a big push for that. It won't be probably until 2028, but it'll give us a chance to give it a few test runs and make it optional, leading up to that point before we make it mandatory. So we've got some good ideas there. And I also want to see, I had a very good meeting with the Circuit Clerks Association, and one thing that just bogs them down and ties them up is the use of this absentee ballot envelope. And I think we want to get to a situation where we get rid of the envelope and we have voters that are there to vote absentee with excuse, obviously, but they show their voter ID and they cast their ballot into the voting machine. So when the polls close, they go tabulate that machine and the results are instantaneous and they get put in. The integrity and the confidence that we will see in our elections will boost because of that. Because as you know, when it takes a while after an election to get all ballots counted, and as the days go by, the confidence from the general voters goes down. This will put that right up there. It also gives the voters the confidence of knowing that their ballot is secret. It gets cast into the machine. It doesn't go into an envelope that's got their name on it. And it also it gives them that second chance vote. If they put in a ballot that has an improperly marked race on it, it'll kick it back out to them and they can redo it. But the clerks are in favor of this. At least some of them. I don't want to put all of them on the clock there of being in favor of it. But it will slow down. It will speed up the process for them to get a voter in, have them vote, and then also on election day to get that through the process. So I think that's going to be three of my main focuses this year, as well as, and I know I'm probably about to hit your chat line off pretty big here, but we're going to look at the ballot initiative, I hope, this year.
Okay. Well, I've shared this with you before, but I have concerns about the fact that the absentee ballots are paper, and they're just stored in a box somewhere in the circuit clerk's office, and they're subject to something happening that would destroy those ballots. I don't know what the heck we could do. It could be a flood, a tornado, a hurricane. That happens in Mississippi.
That's right.
And though it's never happened, it's still a risk. The bottom line is there's a period of time where we're relying on those ballots sitting in a box somewhere in that office to be tabulated and accounted for in the election that could be sometime from when the actual ballot was received, at least if you were able to. So what you're talking about, I want to make sure for the benefit of our audience, it's the same process that we use on Election Day. Except you're doing it absentee and prior to Election Day, right?
That's right. You're doing it absentee, and you've got an excuse to vote absentee. So it's not, no excuse early voting, but it's in-person absentee voting. Now, we're not getting rid of mail-in absentee for people that are overseas, our military members. I know President Trump had a lot to say about mail-in votes, but we're not going to prevent or disenfranchise our offshore workers, our workers who are overseas, and our military, certainly, who are fighting for the freedoms that we enjoy to do that.
Sure.
And so, but for in-person absentee, yes, it would be just like going in and voting on Election Day. You show your ID. They mark down your excuse as long as it's one of the enumerated excuses that you meet that requirement. They'll give you your ballot. You fill it out and you put it in the machine.
You scan it
and you walk out. That's right. And
so we've got the paper ballot for backup for audit, and the machine, of course, stores the vote just like we do on Election Day. Then those are electronically tabulated.
That's right. And the other thing that I like about it, Gerard, is if you go in to vote and you have to write your name on an envelope, Is that going to affect who you vote for? Maybe, and it shouldn't, right? But if some lady you go to church with is the one that's opening up, and she's, oh, well, this is, here's Senator England. Let me see how he voted on that. And not saying that happens, but it's a concern.
It's a risk,
right? And so much about elections, the integrity that's involved in elections is about the process, and it's about your feeling as an individual voter as to how much confidence you have in that. And I think this will boost confidence in it, and it'll make an already safe system that we have in Mississippi, thanks to the leadership of Michael Watson, previous leadership of Lieutenant Governor, who was Secretary of State. We've got very safe elections here in Mississippi, but we can make them better, and I think that's something we can do.
Let's turn our attention to the ballot initiative. You touched on that a second ago. This is something that, honestly, Senator, I hear about, as you said, a lot on the text line here.
That's right.
Folks generally favor restoration of what our Constitution provides for, but as you know, due to a technicality, that's been nullified for a few years.
That's right.
And the legislature has been unable to get legislation done to restore that. Would require amending the Constitution.
It would.
Right? Yeah.
That's right.
So what do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you about my bill that I'm going to drop again this year. Okay. Number one, the number of signatures you have to have on your petitions is going to go up. I think it's time for it to go up. Our population's going up. It used to be around 107,000 that you had to have. What my bill says is 17% of the number of people who voted in the immediately previous gubernatorial election.
Okay.
So this time would be about 150,000 signatures.
So that's
that you would need.
12% now. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
We'd go from 12 to 17.
Yes. So we're increasing it by 5%, but the process is easier now. You have social media. You have you're able to target folks a lot better. I also, instead of saying you have to get so much out of each congressional district, my bill says you can get no more. You can't collect more than 1/3 of your total signatures from any one district.
Okay.
So that you can't go to, say, the northern part of the state and get 90% of your signatures, but you're not required to get them from everywhere else. So there's a little bit of some working that you have to do there. Make sure the whole state is represented in the ballot initiative process, that you're getting your signatures from other places. And I don't think that any ballot initiatives should be allowed to deprive anyone of their rights to life, liberty, or property.
Okay.
And if we put that in there, I think that alleviates some of the concerns that my fellow conservatives may have about this process. Because look, one of the fears that a lot of people have, such as myself, being a strong pro-life individual, is, are we going to see a ballot initiative dealing with abortion, right? Well, that directly affects the life of a human being. So that should not be included in there. Now, we're not calling it that, but we shouldn't be depriving anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process.
Are you not concerned that may trigger some challenges to whether or not, the age-old argument between the pro-life and pro-choice people is that that's not a human being in the womb? Pro-life people, we believe that it is. So would we need some legislation to define that, perhaps?
Well, I think that in Mississippi,
maybe we already
have
that.
I'm not sure. I believe we have life pretty fairly defined in the state already.
Okay.
Now, look, if we need to define it and make it stronger, I think we can do that.
So there's no question about it.
Yeah, no question about it. I don't think there needs to be any question about it. And I think we've got good courts in place. And look, anytime I pass legislation, of course I look at if it's constitutional, right? But I don't worry about challenges. Challenges are going to be there. Challenges are going to happen. I think that our the way that we have separation of powers lined out, I think it makes our laws stronger when they get challenged and looked at.
Sure.
And I feel like we'll be able to survive that. The other thing is, Gerard, the previous ballot initiative allowed the Constitution to be changed. My bill is going to have a provision where if you put an initiative on the ballot and it passes, it goes into statute. It goes into code. It doesn't go into the Constitution. I think our Constitution needs to be a framework of how we operate and not something that you can change by a referendum.
Are you thinking your legislation would enable a simple majority for ratification, or would the threshold be higher?
As of right now, it's still a simple majority the way it was previously. I know last year there was some debate, or the year before there was some debate about how much support an initiative needed, but as of right now, I'm just looking at it. But look, we've got a whole session to debate it and look at it and talk about it.
I got a couple more questions for you. If you can hang around for the final short segment, then I know you got to get to the Capitol.
I certainly can, yes.
Senator Jeremy England in the Element Wealth studio, coming right back.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We're visiting with Senator Jeremy England as he is poised to head down to the Capitol for the gaveling in of the 2026 session. That will occur in just a tad over an hour. Okay, so, I got to ask you, what do you see happening with the school choice agenda that the Speaker is prioritizing, and where do you stand on this issue, Senator?
Yeah, so look, I'll tell you right away, I think that parents should have more choice, should have a huge choice in where their kids go to school and what they do. So get that right out of the way. I'm excited that we're having this conversation. I do think that what we're going to see is more of a public-to-public kind of portability situation that we end up at. I don't know that there's consensus enough out of both chambers to do a universal type move right now. Okay. But look, I'm always in favor. I think every time I come on, I tell you I'm in favor of moving the needle a little bit at a time because it tends to be more permanent. It allows us to look and find out if we have any mistakes, if we need to correct them, what we can do, and we can always revisit that going forward to get to more of a universal. But I think we're going to see more of a public-to-public type deal. And the goal there, what we need to understand, and I think that the people of Mississippi and our teachers and everybody needs to understand, the idea is not to take money away from somebody and give it to somebody else. It's to give opportunity to students that don't currently have them, to give and the parents that want their students to have a better outcome or a chance at a better outcome, to give them that opportunity. So I think we'll see that. The truancy issue, I know the Lieutenant Governor's been talking about this tremendously, and it's scary the number of kids that we've lost since COVID that just aren't in school. We're hoping to maybe get more truancy officers that can go help find these kids, get them back into the classroom. That's going to be another component of it. There's going to be a teacher pay raise component of the education plan that we see, and I imagine out of both sides of the hallway. So again, we've got more things that we agree on than we don't. And Gerard, just speaking personally here, I hope that we see more with ESA expansion in Mississippi, where you can allow for parents to have more money and more capability to send kids to a different, maybe a charter school, maybe a different school that deals with dyslexia, that deals with autism. Maybe it's a specialty school like a trade school or something like that some parts of the country are starting to see, where a school may still teach your core components of like a high school education, but they maybe focus on diesel mechanics, on just mechanics, or some sort of STEM type program that they have there. I think that we could really grow on that. But we also need to remember that we did move from 50th to 16th in education. So we're doing good things. We shouldn't become complacent. We should keep looking and seeing what works. And for me, I think if we allow for more portability and allow for the parents that want the ability to send their kids to a different school, whether it be a specialized school or just a different location that they think their kids will have more success in, I hope that we can move towards that.
So could you support an ESA that would allow a family to move their kid from their student from a public school to a private school and have the money follow the child to the private school? Would you support that?
I would support it, but I'll say I don't know that we're going to get to that point this year. And I think we need to look at that. Look, being somebody that studies economics, and I know you would agree with this, anytime government money is put into the private sector, the costs of that product go way up. And I don't know if we're going to be looking at situations where you have some families that are already using private schools, and we're going to put that out of their reach by putting government funds into it, or we're just going to increase that and send those monies. But at the same time, I don't buy into this argument that, look, public dollars need to go to public schools, because we don't do that with medical care, and nor should we. You shouldn't have to. If you're on Medicaid or Medicare, you shouldn't have to use those benefits at a state or county owned location. You should be able to go wherever you want, wherever you're going to get your best treatment. And I think so there's precedent there for us spending money in other locations. But again, another reason why I want us to take this slow is because our schools, especially on the coast, we've got very good school districts. I say especially on the coast. I'm just more familiar with the coast. Let me put it that way. They do a great job budgeting based on what they know. And if we go change that and pull the rug out from underneath them, it's going to throw a big wrench into their whole budget system. Whether they're going to have teachers, whether they're going to be able to build new classrooms, put desks in classrooms where they have capability. And they're already going to be looking at a portability issue, I believe, after this session, where they might be getting more students coming in anyways. So I hope that we slow walk that, but I don't oppose it.
Okay. Well, as you well know, there are blueprints for this model in other states that have been successfully implemented. So we're not blazing a new trail here. I like to say, when I refer to the lottery, hey, if you're a fan of the lottery, the bad news is we're the 45th state to enact it. The good news is we got 44 other states to study to make sure we get it right. That's right. I think the same could apply here.
That's right. Yeah, I think so. Look, the states are the laboratories of democracy. We can look and see what they do, what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. And a lot of times Mississippi seems to be on the back end of decisions that get made.
That's right.
But you know what? If we do that, we've got plenty of evidence to look at and do the right thing.
Senator Jeremy England has been our guest in the Element Wealth studio. Have a great session there, Senator. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Gerard. Looking forward to the session.
You bet. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News with Starla Brown, AFP Mississippi.
Your of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday, the first day of the 2026 State of Mississippi legislative session. Well, they'll be down there making them laws, Rhino, and our procession will be activated pretty soon here. Right now, it's Starla Brown, Mississippi State Director for Americans for Prosperity. Starla, thanks for coming in. Big day for Americans for Prosperity.
Yeah, always the start of session. We were just chatting before the break here a little bit about this week everybody's coming together, welcoming each other back to the Capitol and socializing and checking in. But some real work probably will begin this week and certainly into next week. And there'll be committee deadlines coming up pretty early in the session where a lot of bills go to die, but we hope to see some good policy coming out. And
what's on your radar? What are you pushing for?
Well, so our top priority is education freedom, and I don't think that if anybody is following us or knows anything about that, we rolled out yesterday our legislative agenda for 2026 and then 2027, which is called the 601 Blueprint. And,
okay.
You can you can find it on all of our social media, but also on our website at ms.afp.americansprosperity.org. So it's ms. We have a separate page. You can go to americansprosperity.org, find our state chapter, click on that, and you can download the blueprint. But we're looking at a lot of different buckets of policy. Education is one, and within that specifically, we're looking at things like fixing our open enrollment issue with the veto power of the sending school, right? And then we're also looking at education savings accounts and how can we phase that into Mississippi as all the states around us have done and come up with a good plan to help families find what they need out of the options. We believe one thing is more options for choice for families is better than no options. And so I think that's a bottom line for us.
So as you know, the Speaker of the House has indicated this is his top priority and intends to advance legislation that, from all accounts, looks like it would phase in education freedom, expand it, and phase in all the way to so-called universal school choice, which means that every family with a child in their household that is in the K through 12 age range is eligible for a public school, essentially, would have access to the funds from the state of Mississippi to follow that child to their education choice, their setting of choice. That's where he's going. Over there in the Senate, as you know, the lieutenant governor and I think leaders in the Senate have indicated not so fast. Seems like there's some interest in open enrollment, public school to public school transfer in certain situations, kind of framed by certain parameters. But that's where it stops. What do you think is going to happen as a result?
Well, I think I know for us, obviously the Senate is really probably needs to reassess some of the thought processes. I think what we've seen is opposition here, and is coming. A lot of it's coming from the liberal left, and it's been vitriol this week. I've seen some of the text messages being sent out.
Me too.
And they're not accurate. There's a narrative. I thought about Rules for Radicals a lot and Saul Alinsky Tactics this week. I'm thinking I need to pull that book. Yeah, I need to pull that book off the shelf and kind of reread that. But at the end of the day, I think it's like this. None of this is mandatory. If you had a universal education savings account available to every citizen in the state of Mississippi or in the United States as a whole, you don't have to participate. No one's forcing you. If you love your public school, your kids are doing fine there, that's great. But what I would say to people and what I would say to the Senate and to the Lieutenant Governor, why deny that opportunity to someone else who really does need it?
Yeah. It does appear that the Lieutenant Governor, again, is supportive of some sort of public school to public school enrollment. But as you know, we had legislation that passed the House last year. It traveled down to the Senate where it was rather swiftly pocket vetoed in the Education Committee. It didn't get any traction.
I was there that day at the Capitol, and prior to that, we actually asked leadership of that committee to hear the bill. Let's let the chips fall where they may. Let's see who's for and who's against it. But that didn't come to fruition. And, we'll give the Lieutenant Governor credit for coming down, after the initial meeting and working with some of the senators to try to get there. There were some senators who would have voted for it, and I think will still support it this year. And we look forward to having more people make that consideration. We have a form of open enrollment just right now. If everybody agrees and the stars align, the sending school can just
pretty
say,
rare.
Sorry, yeah, it is pretty rare. It was set up as a policy that really is a failure to the families who are looking to use it.
So the Lieutenant Governor, when I interviewed him and asked him where he stood on this, he sort of conflated, well, I'd be for it in a failing district, but he also interchanged school. And of course, there's a difference between a failing district and a failing school. So I'm not sure where he stands, what his latest position is. Does he really mean a failing district or a failing school? Because as you know, based on our grading system, we have a very small number of failing districts. We have more failing schools obviously, right, which would be more open and less restrictive. So what do you think there?
Look, there's a lot of things that get tossed around about the accountability piece, the testing, and whether we're teaching to test or we're doing these different things. I think at the end of the day, we need to dig a little deeper into that piece. Absolutely. I think we need to talk more about it. We're not a one-size-fits-all testing organization and supportive of that. But I do believe at the end of the day, we have to look at individualism and we have to look at the individual child and needs. My own personal story in my family with my brother, and back in the day, and there were not a lot of options. Were we that family today who had that need? There's a good chance, we would have certainly taken advantage of it. So I think at the same time, we see a lot about this public money narrative that we keep hearing, but this is taxpayer dollars. And people, even myself, I pay into this. Sure. I'm happy for my taxpayer dollars to go to those families to make those choices.
Sure. And then the Speaker, of course, has indicated interest in expanding charter school provisions as well. Right now, a charter school can only locate in a D or F district, but he wants to expand that. You know, when we first passed the charter school bill in Mississippi 12 years ago, maybe a little more than that, I can't remember exactly, but around that time frame, I understand it was kind of let's dip our toe here and let's limit it, but we thought that we would be able to ultimately amend that and expand access to or the ability of charter schools to locate in any district. I felt like we'd have 75 charter schools in the state by now. We have, 10, I think, total. So we've fallen well short of that. Don't you think that if a charter school could locate more freely or in any district in the state, we'd see more charter schools form?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would certainly be an option. Look, the more opportunity and options we have for those who need them, the better off we are. That's really a bottom line for us. And as a grassroots organization, I can say, you know, in the state since March of 2023, we've been going door to door. We did another concentrated effort again this fall. We've been polling. Other polls have come out since then. But over that, 2+ year period, we've not seen any poll. We've not been at the door where the vast majority of people don't believe this money should follow the child and that these opportunities exist. And all I can say to you is over the course of the last 4 to 6 months, our conversations at the door have been, at times, there have been days out, our team's been out, it's been 100% in favor of this. So we're talking to the average constituent out there, and we've been in Rankin County where we always hear, oh, no one wants it. But that's not the case. That's not the numbers that we've been showing. Yeah. And so I just find that each year this goes up. But we already have people look, we just saw a report this week about migration out of the state. We already have people living across the border working here. And part of that reason is because of the school. Yeah,
I've talked to people who've said that they would move here if they had the ability to choose the education setting. It's
a great place to move. We want people coming in. We want to grow our economy and our population. So we need to do everything we can to make sure that families have that we're competitive with the states around us and families have those options.
Yeah. Let's keep talking about that if you can hang with us.
Sure.
Yep,
absolutely.
We got Starla Brown, Mississippi State Director for Americans for Prosperity, in the Element Wealth Studio. It is gavel in to the 2026 session day. We're coming right back.
Get together, let the good time roll.
The best made-to-order lunch. And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Starla Brown, the Mississippi State Director for Americans for Prosperity, in the Element Wealth Studio on this first day of the legislative session. So, Starla, I guess we'll see what happens with respect to the school choice issue. One thing I do know is that we are being surrounded, walled in by states who have, in fact, enacted robust school choice programs.
Absolutely. And I've had the opportunity to speak with state directors in all of those states to talk to them about, how it's impacted their state, what's been good, what's been bad, what the fight was like. And so I feel confident that we should be able to get to something. And I feel like, the accountability here on the legislators should be to the families of Mississippi, to their constituents, and not to unelected bureaucrats or government employees who are reaching out to them constantly and fighting this. What I find so incredible in some senses is that a lot of the people that are reaching out aren't highly aligned with that legislator to begin with. And so I would say I'm not even sure they would vote for you to begin with. So saying they're going to take you out of office is kind of an interesting phenomena that happens. But at the end of the day, look, I'm going to be positive. There's a lot to talk about here, especially the next couple of weeks. But we are going to engage. Our grassroots is going to engage, and our accountability is going to engage. And so we are prepared to be solidly in this fight for the families of Mississippi.
Okay. Well, and you've probably seen, I was a little surprised at this, reports out of Tennessee that the interest was so strong that, in fact, the IT systems, the administrative systems that they use for the application and approval process were unable to handle the volume. I was a little surprised at that, but I just don't think they expected the level of interest. But the level of interest to take advantage of the opportunities in their new school choice programs off the charts.
It was double what they had set aside.
Yeah.
Their phase-in was 20,000, means, and part of it was for a certain segment of the population, and then part of it was universal. And those applications were double. So, there's interest. Parents want this. I have no doubt in my mind, in the conversations, the polls, the people that we talk to, the voters, that they want this. Like, I do believe the popularity is there. Sometimes I think the loudest people in the room get more attention than they actually deserve. So,
totally.
So I think that's where we are. And, look, there's a lot more going to happen in session besides education. We've got a few other things to take a look at.
I was about to ask you. What else is on your job jar list?
So one of the things we're looking about is some legislation around what we call portable benefits. This is for people who are flexible workers, who are independent contractors, and it's an opportunity to provide a safe harbor for them for their hiring entity. I don't want to say employer because remember, they're independent contractors, to be able to participate in a benefits program that follows that individual, whether they work for Uber this month and they work for Lyft another month, or they move over to DoorDash, or they could be a hairstylist in a salon, they could be someone in the real estate industry. This would follow them, and it allows them to do that but maintain their flexible status. So there's a little bit of stuff there we're looking at. But in addition to that, we are talking to people about regulatory reforms, REINS Act, at the state level. Not sure that we'll dip our toe all the way into the water this session. But remember, our blueprint is taking us all the way into 2027. And then energy and AI. And I know, Gerard, you're well versed in the AI thing. From our position, a lot of it is we just want to make sure that we don't take actions that limit the innovation that's out there. We have an opportunity to lead on this with Maine in our state, and the opportunities we have in the education piece of this. So what we want to see is hopefully we're not having to defend anything, in terms of saying that this is not good legislation. We just hope that to some extent there's some action that just doesn't take place in that we don't overregulate and burden that industry and let it thrive. It is not there. There's so much good in AI. And I think sometimes we hear the message too loudly about, protecting us from it. But at the same time, we don't need to be protected from the innovation that's already here and already happening. We need to figure out where our role and place is in that. And so obviously the data centers, which leads us back to energy. We're doing energy at both the federal and state level. But one of the things that, we were talking about was at the federal level before the break was the SPEED Act, right?
Yep. Permitting
reform. We want to unleash energy in such a way that it's affordable, that we take away the barriers that are not allowing American energy to thrive. And so there's the connection between the data centers and the energy piece. And so we hope that, we'll be able to continue to have conversations around that. And then, REINS Act is regulatory reform that kind of does something that a lot of people are talking about, and that is putting the actual I'm going to say, taking the reins back to the legislative body and away from agencies and who make rules that are often, become laws with no oversight by our elected officials. And so we're looking at enhancing that here in our state.
That's something we've talked about on the program, mainly at the federal level, but it sure feels like the faceless bureaucrats that are buried in the agencies, they take action that has more of an impact on our lives than the 535 we send to the Capitol.
Right.
I mean, that's the way it's gotten. And, of course, a lot of that originates in the executive branch in general, but we seem to run the country with executive orders these days.
Yeah. And so, we've got to really get back to this is our A250 year, and by the way, we're going to be hosting a large event later this year that we look forward to having everybody come out and celebrate Mississippi and our founding principles. But at the end of the day, those founding principles and how our government was formed limited just such as that, right? That is really where we are. But yet we've allowed this agency overtake, whether it's in D.C. or it's in Jackson or any other place in the country, and we need to rein that back in. We are a representative government. We are a republic, and we need to get back to those founding principles. And so this is one way to do that, and to make sure that there's oversight, that the legislators have a say, and because they are who we elected to come and represent us at the Capitol, not a bureaucratic agency.
Do you see perhaps some overstep in our executive branch here in the state of Mississippi? I mean, do we need a Reins Act type piece of legislation?
I think that we could. I've had some conversations around this. We have Peer, right, who does some reviews, and they do a good job over there. They do a good job over there. And I think there's a way for us to partner there. I think there's a way for us to partner with some people in the Senate who are looking at this, and so we're gonna pursue this and toss it around and talk some more and see what we can come up with as a good piece of legislation. There's different ways to approach it, but we're starting those conversations.
Okay. Yeah. And the lieutenant governor's talked about just some general reorganization in government. It does feel like we have too many commissions, too many boards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I applaud him for that conversation, and we hope to have more of it over on that side of the chamber as well.
I think that makes sense. Anything that you guys are advocating for in the state of Mississippi with respect to taxes in any category right now?
Well, look, we just had some phenomenal tax policy, but as far as that goes, we're really, that phase out of the income tax was really a priority for us in our blueprint from last year.
Okay.
And we're getting there, right? We're taking some steps, and we'll see more of that next year as we continue to phase in laws that have already passed. There's some triggers in place there. I think they're important. I know we had the rounding error, and that was a lot of controversy at the Capitol. But at the end of the day, those triggers are there to make sure we keep a stable budget, because we do have some bills to pay for things that are legitimate pieces of government. But for us right now, we're really going to be talking about limiting government, like limiting government in ways. So, new taxes are not things we're looking to see a lot of, obviously. And anytime money goes to the government, regardless of how it gets there, it is a tax.
Yep.
That's just a kind of a bottom line. So, we don't have any specific legislation we're looking at, but we are going to work to defend what we've already done.
Okay. Are you going to advocate once again for repeal of the Certificate of Need?
We are. It is in our 601 blueprint. As you know, there was a really great bill in the House. Chairman Sam Creekmore shepherded that over to the Senate, and it pretty much got decimated and then vetoed. And I respect the governor's veto on this. He did it for the right reasons. But we're looking to see hopefully a couple of bills come out this year, and hopefully we can finally get some of these certificate of need laws that limit the government and open up a free market in healthcare by just sheer competition. So
totally need more supply.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. So
certificate of need laws obstruct supply, essentially.
Yeah,
so.
And look, the governor just got a little money out of that. But if we pass some certificate of need laws, he can apply for a whole lot more.
Totally agree. Starla Brown, Mississippi State Director for Americans for Prosperity. Thanks for coming in, Starla. Appreciate it. Let's have a good session. We're stepping aside for a break, folks. We're in the Element Well studio. Coming right back. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook today is with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So on the C Spire text line, we desperately need something to hold the rural hospitals accountable. So I asked the individual who sent that text, accountable for what? They said, not providing service to the people of their communities. Their answer for everything is transfer the patient to Jackson, Memphis, Tupelo, Hattiesburg. Then they want to complain about the local ambulance services because we cannot keep up with the volume of long-distance, non-emergent transfers. Well, there is a school of thought that differs from that kind of counters that believes that we should reorganize and restructure rural hospitals to really focus more on general emergent care and stabilizing the patient and then getting them to a larger city and in a hospital that is equipped to treat lots of different situations and conditions. That I think it's impractical these days, honestly, from an economics perspective and a financial perspective, to try to house all that in a rural healthcare facility. I just don't think it works anymore. It's a problem now with the limited services they have. They're all bleeding money.
It worked at one point in time where the most advanced thing in the hospital was the X-ray machine. Because an X-ray machine compared to something like a CAT scan or an MRI or anything else that's complex and complicated in the hospital that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars now, an X-ray machine was pretty simple. It was still an expensive piece of machinery back then, but medicine was different back then when the rural hospital system flourished and was at its highest point of functionality and feasibility, because you had rapid economic growth within the country. The medical profession wasn't nearly as dependent on disposable used goods. Like, for example, I was talking during the break about syringes. Plastic disposable syringes didn't come around until the 60s. So anytime before then, pretty much any shot you got was from one of those big honking glass syringes that had to then be sterilized, cleaned, and the needle resharpened down in the basement probably. So medicine was completely different when rural hospitals were at their peak. Medicine has changed dramatically since then and has allowed for more innovative treatments, but with that comes cost.
Yeah. It just becomes a challenging, if not impossible, financial model. This person says, I'm not talking about major illnesses. I'm talking about general surgeries and orthopedics. Right, but to Rhino's point, an MRI machine is an expensive device that didn't exist until a few decades ago, honestly. So, again, trying to equip every single hospital, regardless of the community and the market they serve, with all the capabilities that we have now in modern medicine is just not practical. And I understand what you're saying and calling for them to be held accountable. I guess I would say if it's a private institution, the market holds them accountable. And I don't want government stepping in there. If it's a publicly funded institution, such as a county hospital, that could be a different story. Well, then I think there what you would I suggest you do is go talk to your county supervisors that oversee the hospital, or municipal leaders as well that are involved in that.
Well, I mean, just for example, like model. General surgeries, first two that came to mind were like appendix and tonsils.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how often those are done nowadays, but they're examples you can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, if in the local community, every time a teenager needs their tonsils taken out or somebody needs their appendix worked on or removed, they go to the local hospital, and the hospital sends them to Tupelo or to Jackson or to Hattiesburg or somewhere else. Eventually, the people are going to stop going to the local hospital when they need their tonsils taken out or their appendix worked on.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
That's the market.
I think it's just a different environment than it once was, and so there's a lot of discussion about how to address the issue of standing up and operating just a full-service hospital in a rural area where there are just not a lot of people and therefore not a lot of payers, not a lot of customers. And even when you do have a lot of customers, if they're on Medicaid or they're uninsured, honestly, even Medicare, which reimburses below cost, that's a problem. That's why you hear hospitals constantly talking about their payer mix. And hospitals that have a healthy dose of commercial payers just do better financially because commercial payers reimburse more. Of course, in Mississippi, unfortunately, our commercial payers, if I'm not mistaken, reimburse at the lowest levels in the entire country. We also have a lot of sick people in Mississippi and a lot of sick people whose illnesses could be avoidable. And that burdens the healthcare system, especially if they're uninsured or they're on Medicare or Medicaid. And this really, I think, stimulates lots of discussion and lots of questions. But one good thing to the texter here is that I believe we ought to be having more discussion, more robust discussions about the cost of health care as opposed to just health insurance. We just always look, because that's who we pay, I get it, and we look at the health insurers as the cause for the high cost of health care and just being covered, because that's who we pay. Sure,
and just that makes sense. To put some numbers on the example I gave of MRI versus X-ray and how much more expensive modern medicine is compared to earlier medicine. Even today, an X-ray, like, for example, the simplest X-ray you're going to have is usually in a dentist office.
Okay.
For that system, you're looking at $10,000, $15,000. For the highest-end deluxe Cadillac digital X-ray systems on the market, $200,000 with all the bells and whistles. Now, to compare that to an MRI machine, the most bare-bones, entry-level, refurbished MRI machine is going to cost you $100,000. And for the top-of-the-line Cadillac with all the bells and whistles, you're looking at $3 or $4 million.
Well, and then I think about all the various specialties, right, medical specialties that we had. And I know the texter mentioned orthopedics. I mean, generally speaking, those are a few and far between, and they typically join up with lots of other orthopods, because even within orthopedics there are specialties. Like I have a little injury to a hamstring. I give you a personal example. I don't mind talking about this, and I have a friend that I play golf with. This is an orthopedic surgeon, and went to visit him last week for some diagnosis. He prescribed a little physical therapy, but somebody came down the hall, another physician, when he was escorting me out, he says, yeah, that's so-and-so. He's our back guy, right? So you know that even within, and there's like 10 in this clinic. And they all kind of specialize in different areas. Look, the good news is medicine is very specialized. But the treatments are way better because they're targeted and they're specialized. The bad news is we ain't got enough of them. And it's just hard to get those fanned out and distributed and placed throughout every little inch of the country, much less the state of Mississippi. This is one of the problems that we're having. And OBGYN is one of those that comes to mind because that's often something you can't wait on, right? Depends on when that baby starts to come. But Last I checked, we have one for several counties from Grenada over to the river and that kind of area. And that's a problem. But when they can go to a bigger city and make way more money because they're getting reimbursed at commercial rates, much higher commercial rates, rather than uninsured or Medicaid, well, of course they're going to go there. That's just kind of supply and demand 101. Who's not interested in, improving their personal financial situation? Now, the good thing is many of the physicians, that do practice in our state, knowing they could all leave and make money elsewhere, they choose to do so. They want to live in the state, want to raise their families here. Maybe they've got a legacy within their family of being a multi-generational Mississippi family. So that's great. That's why we attract them. But the younger folks, man, it's hard to keep them here. They know that they can, bolt to any of the major cities not far from where we are here and get a whole lot more money for their practice, their specialty, their services. And so it's difficult to recruit and retain. We're going to step aside for a break. The Dow, by the way, having a really good day again, up 400 points at this moment, probably setting another record. The NASDAQ up 105 points. ZZ Top pumping us out of this segment. The final one in hour 2 coming up next. And then the afternoon portion of Middays. Stay with us.
Up of Mississippi.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Tell you I'd be home every night, breakfast in bed and we'll never fight. Say I'm wrong when I know I'm right, but baby, I'd be lying. Only staying on for a day or two, pretending I'm too good to be true. Saying I'd write a song about you, but baby, I'd be lying.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, you don't hear much on the show from that group. That's Blackberry Smoke. How about that? Good tune there. Appreciate that. So on the C Spire text line, there are some folks that do not support education choice, education freedom. In particular, the public to private, this individual says, is a big hell no. I'm not sure why there's such a strong aversion to that. It seems to be a situation where people just in general don't think that public money ought to go to private providers of goods and services. But especially from an education perspective. But as I asked the individual on the text line that sent that text, should the government contract and procure from any third-party private entity goods and services that it needs to operate and deliver services to citizens and the taxpayers? I don't understand the merit of that argument, I guess. I struggle with that. Is not education a service to the public, to society, that happens to be the responsibility, the way our system works, of government? So when government essentially outsources that to entities, organizations, providers, vendors other than those that are owned and operated by the government, why is that bad? I don't get it. What's the aversion there? It's almost like, well, we're making them rich. Well, does it make sense for the government to produce, literally to manufacture, distribute, operate, administer, support, implement every single good and service that it requires to deliver the services that it's authorized to deliver? Might as well just nationalize the entire economy. That's more tantamount to socialism. Central planning, central control. So I don't really understand the aversion. I don't understand the basis for that. I really don't. I can tell you this, that if you think about the United States military and the precision by which they just executed this mission, this operation in Venezuela, a lot of private sector technology and innovation played a key role in the extraordinarily safe and precise and just timely, efficient execution of that mission. Now, we've pointed out numerous times, Rhino, that we're not happy about the fact that the Pentagon cannot seem to pass a simple audit of where all its money went. I get it, and that's a problem. And I really think that our Congress shouldn't give them a dime until they bring some folks up to the Hill and say, what happened to these assets? What happened to this money? Really is the more appropriate question that we appropriated to you. Yeah, I do think there should be some accountability for that. And there doesn't appear to be, and we just keep increasing the amount of money we give them. Most recently, about $35 billion a year in the continuing resolution. We'll see what happens as that continuing resolution is scheduled to expire once again at the end of this month. And that means the Congress has got to refund the government all over again. Are we going to get regular order or kick the can down the road with another continuing resolution? But the main point here is that I don't really think it's a problem for the government to invest with third-party private organizations for the delivery of goods and services that the government is obliged to deliver to its citizens. In this case, it's education. Guess I'm not sure. Now, you see people say, well, they've got to be accountable to the same standards. And I would argue that the market is a far superior regulator and arbiter than government ever will be. That ain't working out too well. Because if you get your education scholarship account and you use it to attend a private school, your child attends a private school, and the outcome for your child's not very good, a responsible parent's going to make a change. That's the whole idea. But right now, as you know, if you're in a public school and it's not working out well and there are a myriad of problems, you're stuck. Government says, nope, you got to go there. That's the problem we're trying to address here. It's pretty straightforward. It's called freedom, choice. Fox News, SuperTalk News next, then the afternoon hour of middays.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 3 of Middays is now live from the Element Wealth Studio. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. We should also pass on that, the Ole Miss Rebels are going to be taking on the Miami Hurricanes in the college football playoff semifinal matchup. That's at the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona on Thursday night. And guess what? Sports Talk Mississippi will go live on Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. to bring you all the coverage of the biggest sporting event in Mississippi's history. Now, some may argue with that's not the biggest sporting event in our history, but you could make the case for that. I believe, for sure. The national stage at that level in what is really the biggest college football sport in terms of attention and attendance. I'm headed out to the desert tomorrow. Southwest Airlines, by the way, originally they scheduled 2 direct flights. Now, you know how that works, Rhino. Southwest seems to be more flexible than the other airlines, and so it just added 2 direct flights out of Jackson, direct to Phoenix. And then this morning, they added a 3rd. They sold those out quickly, as you can imagine. 737, 150 people or so, I think.
Yeah, I was joking with Rebecca yesterday on Good Things. I'm just picturing there's just this random businessman that needs to get to Phoenix and needs to be there by Thursday. And he said, oh, a new flight opened up, and he booked this flight, and everybody else is going to be on there in powder blue and red and ready to go for the game, and he's there in his suit with his briefcase just like, what have I gotten myself into?
85 to 230 passengers is what Boeing says, so just depends on the configuration. I think if you got the 3x3 configuration, which is, I believe, what Southwest aircraft are, 230. Okay, so that's pretty cool. But they're headed to the desert. Surprisingly, the forecast is for rain in the desert, which is kind of weird. I think it's going to clear up by the evening on Thursday. But all set. You got the Miami folks coming from a long way down there in South Florida. But a lot of people headed from the state of Mississippi and really from other parts of the country where the Ole Miss alumni reside descending into the desert. Pretty cool, I'll have to admit. I'm headed out tomorrow after the show. By the way, excited that tomorrow we've got Corey DeAngelis, perhaps the foremost evangelist for education freedom in the nation, coming on the program tomorrow. We've been working to get that scheduled for a while. Real pleased that worked out. And then headed out to the desert. I believe Dave is going to be filling in on Thursday and Friday, and I'm going to call in on Thursday and give a bit of a report from the Phoenix area with respect to the big game and other stuff going on. So, on the C Spire text line, Jeff in Hattiesburg says, we've always had school choice. You can move to any district that you choose. I can't understand how universal school choice can be a conservative idea. Well, I guess a couple things there, Jeff. Really, anybody can move to any district they choose. I mean, do you really believe that that's practical, that some people aren't limited by their jobs, their economic means, etc.? How about the people that during the COVID era went out and bought houses at 2% interest rates and are kind of stuck there? They have some interest in upgrading and rotating, but they can't afford it because now it's 6% interest rates. So they're stuck. And it looks like they're going to be that way for a while. That's one of the problems in the housing industry right now. We're not having enough turnover. So I don't know that I agree with you that, oh, yeah, anybody could just pick up and move everywhere. I just don't think that's practical. Sometimes you're taking care of a family member. Could be an elderly parent. A number of reasons that just don't really permit that and allow that. And also keep in mind that, in general, any sort of even public-to-public school open enrollment, the students, the families, would be responsible for transportation to the school outside of their district, should they choose to do, though, and should they exercise that option. And then universal school choice, I guess, Jeff, it's conservative because it means less restrictive government and more freedom. We conservatives believe that freedom and choice is superior to government dictate, mandate, restriction. That's what we have now. You live at this address, this is where you go to school. Doesn't matter that school doesn't represent the optimum environment for your child. You got to go there. That's what the government says. So that's why it would be considered a conservative idea. And then also, we should point out that the president fully supports education choice. We also got a Secretary of Education who not only supports that those plans and those policies, but is busy. I got to use one of the left's words here, Rhino, dismantling the Department of Education, which I would say is a good thing. Gary in Carrollton says, we have progressed in almost every area beyond our ability to afford. Gary, they're talking about health care. I actually believe there's a lot of truth to that. That I think, Rhino, it's a year or so ago maybe, that there's a new treatment for sickle cell anemia, which primarily affects the black community. They're more susceptible to it, vulnerable to that disease, and it can be debilitating and painful, honestly. But, there's a new treatment for that, recently introduced. I do think it got approval, if I'm not mistaken, by CMS to be covered by Medicare and Medicaid, but it's like $2 million. Now, it remains to be seen how much medical expense is avoided through the one-time administration of that treatment. I don't know that that's been determined yet, but that's just one of the many examples. And you and I could sit here and talk for hours about medical innovation through the years. That's a good thing. We keep inventing. I say that all the time. Think about the weight loss drugs, how that's just taking the whole dang country by storm. Well, so now there's the question of, should insurance pay for that? That's controversial. Well, that wasn't even available a short few years ago. And there are a lot of people that are benefiting.
It put a dagger in the heart of the whole movement of healthy at any size.
Absolutely true. Completely right.
Because most of the most vocal proponents of healthy at any size suddenly started getting slimmer.
Correct. Either through injections and now in pill form, right? So, but that's just one more thing to add to the catalog that we're paying for. Now, hopefully what that does is reduce or perhaps prevent, right, the occurrence of lots of disease associated with obesity, in particular obesity. I'm not talking about just being a little overweight. I'm talking about morbid obesity, which costs money to deal with. So diabetes is a hugely expensive disease in this country. Unfortunately, here in Mississippi, we have the highest rate of diabetes and hypertension on a per capita basis in our state. It's not something that we should be proud of, but, if we could address that and hopefully cut down and reduce a lot of the other diseases that stem from that, problems, sure, that does reduce our costs, but there's an initial buy-in to that takes some time to work through the system. But, yeah, there's some truth to what you're saying there, Gary, and that's a point I've made all the time is we keep inventing new care. It's a good thing, but everybody wants it, and it costs money, and it's also extending life. So we're taking care of people for longer than we used to. And, man, we don't talk about it a lot, but a whole lot of stuff's been invented to extend life by a little bit, right, as we age. But it costs money, a lot of money. So we're all paying for that. And while I don't support mandates, the fact is the young folks that don't see the need to go buy insurance really make the risk pool riskier, and that's what drives the cost up. What would drive the cost down is if the young folks would go out and get insurance. Again, I'm not for the mandate of that, but that's just actuarial reality. It's just simple math. More people paying in, not using as much, well, then the costs go down for everybody because you're increasing the risk pool. That's just how insurance works in general. We're going to take a break right now. It's Hall & Oates breaking us out of this segment. Coming right back on the Middays from the Element Wealth studio.
that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Back with you from the Element Wealth Studio. On the C Spire text line. No, it's not. Talking about our live read that the Sports Talk guys are going to be all geared up on Thursday for what our live read says is the biggest sporting event in Mississippi history. Says, no, it's not. MSU winning the College World Series took numerous games to prove themselves. First to ever do it. Hail State. Sure, a case could be made for that, as well as Ole Miss winning the College World Series. So, but very subjective, I would say. Let's see here. It's in a dome. Rain doesn't matter. I get it. I know, but there's a little walking you got to do to get from where you park, at least the way we're all situated, into the dome. The other big point is it's just highly unusual to go to Phoenix and it be raining. That just doesn't happen very, very often. And I've spent a lot of time out there on business over about a 25-year period of time. I could count on one hand the number of times I was there where it actually rained. One time, Rhino, I went, and it sleeted. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know what it is about being in the desert when it's sleeting, which is just a rarity. It's painful. The sleet's almost painful in the desert. It's just kind of a different atmosphere. Can't really explain it, put my thumb on it, but yeah, just weird that it's raining in the desert, and it's like a high of 60 or something. That's very unusual weather. Typically, it's this time of year, mid-70s, brilliant sunshine. That's why a lot of people live out there. They pay a lot of money for that sunshine. Let's see here. Great business decision on the part of Southwest, says Charles in Sumrall. I checked on the Southwest tickets from Jackson to Phoenix, $7.51, one-way direct. Absolutely. Mose says, Gerard, I'm sure those extra flights are returning Friday, right? I believe so, Mose. I think you could schedule your return trip. But I think the direct flight is on Friday from Phoenix Sky Harbor into Jackson. Tyler from Knox Pater says, freedom is better. You come up with that gem all by yourself? I did, but I don't think I can take credit for that. We conservatives believe that freedom and markets are always superior to government. He says, I see why they put you on the radio. Yeah, I don't think that was why. I can't take credit as the originator of that. But it is straightforward, though, Rhino. I don't get why we are supposed to be a big-time red conservative state. This is more consistent with the idea of freedom, yet we struggle getting this across the finish line. We're protectionists here in Mississippi, I'm sad to say. We protect the healthcare community with CON laws. We protect against allowing people to use their phones to bet with mobile sports betting. We protect the legislature by not enacting a citizen-initiated ballot procedure. And we protect, I got to bring this one up, retail car dealers in Mississippi by not allowing alternative routes to market. We're protectionists. We're conservative, though, except when it comes to education, healthcare, retailing, and mobile sports betting. Other than that, we're conservative. We got to change that. We got to do better. I'm optimistic in this session. We're going to get a lot of this stuff done. Dan in Hattiesburg says, no public to private funds. Let's let the state take care of all the public roads and see how that goes. Agreed, Dan. It's just impractical. I don't understand the objection, the problem. Now, what I will say is,
what it feels like most of the people against school choice sit at home in their free time and pray to daddy government to tell them what they can and can't do.
Oh, it's exactly right. It's totally right. But I will say, though, to your point, Dan, and I've made this point many times on the program, I'm for competitive bidding and value-based selection of third-party private sector vendors to provide goods and services to government. I'm not for cronyism. I'm not for all these no-bid scenarios. We have a problem in the state of Mississippi I've been harping on for 30 years now that allows certain services to be procured without competitive bidding. I object to that. I don't think that's in the best interest of the taxpayers. I don't agree with granting preferential treatment based on race or ethnicity or national origin in competitive or in contracting, such as what occurs and what is policy in the city of Jackson. And I'm calling on the legislature to pass laws that would prevent such preferential treatment. But we can't get that done. You and I have talked about it before. We've talked to the legislators about it. They're kind of like, well, what are you talking about? They don't want to touch it. It's fear of retribution and backlash. You know what? They don't want to be disliked. It's the truth. They don't want the haters to come out and say, you're a racist. No, you're on the right side of this issue, and I don't mind taking a stand on it right now. The taxpayers pay a premium for what is not the best value for them because of these twisted procurement policies. And our government won't act to prevent that, to prohibit such practices. It's disturbing. And then we have all these other list of services that are also obtained by the government, procured by the government, that are not subject to competitive bidding. I can assure you that fleeces the taxpayers by orders of magnitude more than anything the state auditor has ever found and reported, because it's been going on for decades. And it's alive and well, and it's cronied up to hell and back. We should pass law that prohibits those practices and repeals those ancient statutes. They serve no purpose. I don't know what the logic was behind that a long time ago when they were enacted, but it doesn't matter. They're bad. They're not in the best interest of the taxpayers. Let's see. And also George in Greenwood says, and at root, the entrenched opposition. Well, first he says, no, the aversion is to seeing public money go anywhere else besides the private individuals who hold employment positions in the public school system. And at root, the entrenched opposition at any private schools participating in school choice options arises from desire for government-approved views and assumptions to be taught to as many children as possible during their formative, impressionable years. I hear you, and I just argue that the market will sort that out. We don't need government oversight of private schools. All these people that clutch their pearls and gnash their teeth, well, they don't have the same sort of standards. Okay, the best standard of all is the consumer. That would be the families.
The main problem I have with the lack of logic put forth by those that are anti-school choice is they can't seem to make their minds up how many students this is going to impact. You have some of them that are arguing that it's going to be such a flood of incoming students that it's going to mess up my bucolic little area. And then you got others who say, well, I don't hear there's any demand for it. I don't think anybody's going to take advantage of it. It's not going to even be used. Why worry about it?
That's absolutely true. That's totally true. Yeah, there's no consensus on that. I've also seen some school administrators, high-ranking administrators, taking a stand, voicing their opposition to these policies. Now, I know that some of them are out there with like these disclaimers that say, oh, this is my personal views. But, dude, you're the superintendent of a school district. It's not like it's secret. You could say it's your personal views all day long. You're weighing in here on public policy that directly affects you. Now, if your opinion is requested to provide input to lawmakers, I'm all for that. And if you want to go in there and tell them you oppose something such as school choice and tell them how bad it would be for you and your school district, that's fine. Tell them. Give them all the support for your conclusions and let them as lawmakers then process that as input and make appropriate decisions. But I just think going out and promoting and campaigning a certain way, I don't know. I have a problem with that. It just doesn't seem quite right to me that you're hired by the public but you're taking a stance on something like this that would directly impact you. Maybe I'm being a little idealistic in that respect, but that's the way I feel. Jason in Tupelo says, what about homeschooling? Where would those tax dollars go? So, Jason, if included in school choice legislation would be provisions that would allow, again, families to direct the dollars that are assigned to their child for their public school education to be used in a homeschool. There are ways to control that. Those would be issued to that family if they sign up for that. They would get essentially those funds deposited in an electronic account that could only be used. This is the way it's designed in other states. I'm saying, look, the state of Mississippi can do it any way they want. Whatever can pass through the legislature gets signed by the government. This is how it's typically done in the other states. And then those accounts are limited to only procure and purchase certain services and goods and materials from a catalog, if you will, specifically for homeschooling. Coming right back.
From the SuperTalk app with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
You know, every time I hear that song, all I can think about was the short-lived but rather entertaining pop-up video series. That was a good one that had a lot of pop-up video that would, of course, during the video, share a lot of the trivia about...
pop-up video.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Little bubbles would come up with some facts and, again, just... messages and trivia that you otherwise wouldn't know about the band members, the making of the song.
A lot of behind-the-scenes info on the music videos.
Pretty cool. That was fun. No
like
longer, though.
This set cost this much money and had to be reserved this far in advance. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Pretty neat. So back to Jason and Tupelo's question about the homeschooling. So the idea of school choice, I mean, there are many elements and components. And again, I just want to be clear, it can be whatever the legislature fashions that can make its way through both chambers into the governor's desk for signature and final enactment. But in general, if you kind of look at school choice in phases, if you will, and kind of phasing all the way up to what is considered universal school choice, just progressing through, usually you start with the public-to-public school enrollment. And that could be with or without restrictions, as we've talked about. The House last year passed a bill that would not restrict it to any school or any district. If you are enrolled based on your address in a school and you want to transfer and attend a different public school, what that bill would have done is precluded the transfer or school, the homeschool, from standing in the way. Right now, you can do that in Mississippi, but both schools districts actually have to agree. So that's kind of the entry level, if you will, school choice. And then you progress to public to private, where a public school student could access the money allocated to them for their public school education. Their family could direct that to be used for private school tuition. And just to be clear, it's whatever is allocated to the student, which right now in Mississippi is about $6,900 annually. That's the amount of money that would be available in the form of a voucher, an education scholarship or savings account to pay for private school tuition. If the private school tuition costs more than that, well then you would have to cover the additional cost as well as the transportation. And then homeschool is another aspect, another dimension of school choice. And again, that would work as we explain before we went to break how it works in other states is, again, the money. A lot of people think, Rhino, we've seen this on our text line before. You've seen it in social media. Oh, they're just going to send them money and they're going down to Walmart to buy beer and cigarettes, right? You see that? Like, no, that's not what it is. It's an account that has funds deposited in it that can only be used to purchase what is listed in the catalog. There are exceptions. There's certain expenses that are reimbursable, but you've got to provide all kinds of documented support, submit that to be reimbursed. Has to be approved and be reimbursed. Kind of like the way business expense reimbursement works. You just don't say, hey, look, send me some money, I had these expenses. You got to provide some legitimate documented support for those expenses. That's the way that would work, to control it and to ensure that that money's only used for a homeschool education. And the Department of Education would approve what those products, those materials, those services entail, what they look like, what's eligible for reimbursement. So that's how that would work.
You can't just hand over an invoice that says 6 boxes of crayons, $1,000, please.
Exactly. So that's how that would typically work. I would expect in the state of Mississippi, our program would be designed the same way. That's how it's working in other states. So that's another aspect of it. And then charter schools. Right now we have charter schools. You can apply to attend a charter school, and if you'd like, in the state of Mississippi. But we only have 10. Only have 10 in the whole dang state. Most of them are in central Mississippi. And any sort of expansion of the charter school program, which is what the Speaker of the House wants to do, would allow charter schools to exist in all school districts, not just be limited to D and F districts. So we'd see a lot more interest in charter school operators applying for a charter to create a school, which, by the way, charter schools are public schools, and they are governed by public school policy. That's different than a private school. Let's see what else we got here on the C Spire text line. Oh, Darren in Jackson says, I've lost 65 pounds since October 31st with GLP-1 injections. We're talking about health care and just all the new stuff that gets invented that costs money, but folks want to access it. That's great to hear, Darren. Congratulations to you. Glad that's working out right. I think you and I both know, arguably everybody listening knows people probably in their circles that have had experience with this. It's really been something special and quite the revolution in medicine in general. Started out, right, to treat diabetes, more importantly, but it turns out, hey, wait, these things actually help people lose weight, which is a contributor, a factor in diabetes as well. So all that's really good. I would love to know how many Mississippians work within the school district. This is Fred from Kosciuszko. Boundaries in which they reside. I know I commute out of my district for work. What if you were told you could not leave your district to work somewhere else? You must take a job within a specific geographical area. I know it's apples and oranges, but what if, I hear you, Fred, it's a great point you make. It's just hard to justify and provide sound rationale, right, for you are restricted to attending this school. You must. That's your only option. In other words, you have no options. I know that I brought it up before, but I think it bears repeating. It's Bernie Sanders and the incident several years ago, and this was stupid. He's out having himself filmed in a grocery store, questioning as he's observing the shelves in a grocery store, why do we have all these different brands of deodorant? Like, why does it matter? Let the market figure it out. What do you want? And I know the answer is, this is what he wants, government to step in and say, we don't need all that, right?
Here's your government-issued deodorant, comrade.
That is the example. You remember that what he used was, why do we have all these deodorants? It's so stupid, man.
And it's the ultimate irony when you have any modicum of understanding or even knowledge of history, because it doesn't take much understanding to go back and look at, was it Boris Yeltsin that visited the U.S.?
That's right.
And went to a grocery market in Texas and was almost emotional because of the variety of popsicles they had.
I remember that. Because he's used to a country where their citizens largely went to the grocery store to find empty shelves, right? Shortages of everything, constantly. Guess what was going on in Venezuela as well, right? Shortages of the basic necessities of life. That's what socialism really. Maduro leaned more into communism with his confiscation of assets and nationalizing them. That's what it buys you. It's really not a hard formula to figure out. And now we got this loon in New York City that we all ought to be paying attention to, Zoran Mondami, who just appointed someone, I can't remember the exact title, but advocate for tenants or some crap like that, that literally talks about seizing private property for the collective. And it's also brought up some nonsense about, having your own house and stuff, that's an element of white supremacy.
He also said he was going to make sure that World Cup tickets were affordable for all.
I didn't know that.
There's just one big problem with that. There aren't any World Cup matches scheduled for New York City.
So he thinks he can extend his span of control.
And he's also catching some flack because immediately after the Maduro news broke, he put out on social media that he had been briefed on the matter.
Oh, my gosh.
There's just one problem. It was a classified deal, and he doesn't have clearance, so he wasn't briefed on anything. He read it on social media just like everybody else.
Unbelievable. Larry and Ma says, I went to Vegas last week and it rained every day. Yeah, I was talking about it being forecast to rain in Phoenix a little bit tomorrow and then into Thursday. But the forecast also says clear at night in the evening. So hopefully it comes in and gets out. Yeah, that's unusual, Larry. That's raining every day in the desert there in Vegas. Very unusual. On the C Spire text line, carrying your clubs, I'm not going to have time. Kind of an in-and-out deal, really focused on the game and the other activities going on. Brian in Madison says, it ain't the rain in Phoenix that is the weather issue, it's the heat. It's like an oven out there in the summer. Man, don't I know it. You're right about that, Brian. Spent a lot of time out there. The good news is, Brian, golf balls go really far in the summer because they're like no molecules in the air. I've been there before, Rhino, when the temperature reached about 117, as I recall. They shut the airport down. Because no molecules to create the friction to generate lift to get the planes off the ground. Literally shut the airports down because of the heat. I don't know that that's happened since then. I think this was back in the 90s. We're coming right back with the final segment of Middays on this day where the legislature's in session.
It all comes down.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
My daddy spent his life looking up at the sky. He cussed, kicked the dust, saying, son, it's way too dry. The clouds up in the city, the weatherman complains. But where I come from, rain is a good thing. Rain makes corn, corn makes whiskey, whiskey makes my baby feel a little frisky. Back roads are bogging up, my buddies pile up in my truck. We hunt our honeys down, we take them into town, start washing all our worries down the drain. Rain is a good thing.
Bob in Starville says, Delbert, the Democrat, will support a public-to-public model. No way in hell universal school choice passes. Zero. Well, I'm optimistic. He has indicated that he supports public-to-public, but it's hard to really understand clearly what sort of restrictions he favors around that. Again, we've interviewed him. We've talked to him. We're still trying to get him on, by the way, to come in and talk further about this. Hopefully, since the session's underway, he will oblige. We'd like to dig into those details. Of course, the ship may have sailed already, Rhino, by the time we get him in here. But in general, what he's indicated is some limited public-to-public, limited to failing districts or schools. Not really. That's what he said. I pointed out, he uses those interchangeably. Well, that's a very small, limited number of areas, honestly, in the state. that would qualify on that basis. So we'll see where that goes. The money that would go to private or homeschool students, where's it going now? They are currently private or homeschool students. Well, that money is not, the state funds only go to the public schools if the student is enrolled in the public school. It's based on enrollment. So the answer to that is families whose students are in private schools or are being homeschooled are not receiving any state funds for that purpose, and the public schools to which they are assigned based on their address are not receiving any state funding for the education of that child. However, the schools do receive the local funding that comes from property taxes. So a person who lives in a school district who sends their child to a family who sends their child to a private school or homeschools them that also owns property, pays property taxes, the majority of which go to the school district in which they live, even though their child does not attend that school. They are literally subsidizing the education of the students attending the public school. Protecting that paycheck, if they really thought they were better, they'd welcome a chance to prove it. No competition equals apathy and entitlement. I agree. If that transfer bill is approved, that would give a lot of systems a green light to recruit athletes in their school. Well, the bill was, as you recall, Rhino, was drafted in such a way to prevent that sort of cherry picking and I guess discriminatory selection process that you couldn't just say, okay, well, we'll take you because you're an athlete, but not you because you're not. There was some, I don't remember the details. We'll have to dig that up when we get another bill this year. But there were some restrictions around that to prevent it. Certainly, with respect to private schools, that's happening now, right? That's actually occurring now, so I don't think this would change any of that. Maybe if we took all the poison out of the food, then we wouldn't need GLP-1 injections. Well, there's certainly something to be said for the eating and the consumption habits in our country. There's been a lot of attention that's been dedicated to that very issue since the president took over from various members of his cabinet at the FDA and CMS that are focused on the Making America Healthy Again movement. We are consuming a lot of food that's not good for our health and does create health problems. No doubt about that. Mose just said SB 2004 has just cleared the appropriation committee. It would take $500 million from the capital expense fund and place it in PERS. It would also commit $50 million a year for PERS for 10 years. How about that? Thanks for letting us know that, Mose. So that just virtually depleted, I guess, about half of the capital expense fund. As I recall, it had about $1 billion in it. So we'll have to take a look at that. Also, Mose says he doesn't agree that school officials should be allowed to testify to the legislature. They have a direct conflict of interest in the outcome. I hear you, Mose. I could live with that over them just going out and publicly campaigning for it. So I don't think it's a problem for the legislature to call on anybody that works in government to provide some sort of sense of how things work on the ground and what their opinions would be. Now, I would support the idea that government would hear from folks that are on different sides of the issue with some degree of credibility. Hadn't thought about the golf ball molecule effect. Talk about long drives. I'm telling you, Brian, it's the truth. Well, we are out of here today. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.